All right, welcome to the 18th episode of the Next Man Up podcast. I'm here with Rich and Adam and some dog that you may or may not be able to hear barking in the background. But anyway, hello, dog, and hello, Adam and Rich.
Woof,
What's going
woof,
on?
woof. I speak dog.
Doing all right.
Yeah, you do. Adam's a dog.
Well, I'm doing really good since Milwaukee won. My pick is still riding out.
Yeah,
Well, you picked the
not happy about
sketchiest team in the sketchiest playoffs of all time.
Yep.
Yeah, dude, I can't believe how many injuries there's been in this playoffs. But I do got to give Atlanta some props, winning in 7 games against Brooklyn.
Yeah.
That's not the real Brooklyn Nets, though. They weren't healthy.
No,
So...
You said you got to give props to Atlanta, and then you
I
said
misspoke.
Brooklyn.
I meant Milwaukee.
But let's give props to both while we're at it.
Both of those teams. Yeah, I was getting there. Wow. My bad, guys. Thanks for calling me out. That would have been embarrassing if all 2 of our fans saw that.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, dude. Like, I don't know. I feel like Milwaukee might be the best team left, but it's still like I feel like it's weird that there's a direct correlation between like the teams that were in the conference finals last year and the teams that got sent home early this year. It's just there's just wasn't enough turnaround time. Like 3 out of those 4 teams had injuries in the actual playoffs, and all of those teams had injuries during the regular season that were severe. So it just doesn't really feel fair to me. And I don't know, partially because it just makes me look like I don't know what I'm talking about when there's like a bunch of random teams in the conference finals. But I mean, I think there's a pretty direct correlation between teams that made it deep last year and teams that either didn't exist or, got knocked out early last year and now somehow making it far. So, I mean, it's cool. Definitely exciting for Atlanta and Milwaukee. I think the Atlanta one was more of an upset, though, and I'm actually more impressed by that because Philadelphia was fully healthy. Atlanta started off their season super rough, got a hold of coach Nate McMillan, hired him, which was arguably the smartest front office move of any team this year, just changing coaches. That totally turned this team around because in the GM's defense, he put together a nice team. Everyone was looking at the Hawks this year and saying, oh, that team's going to take a step forward. Absolutely. Like they added some shooting around Trae Young. They added Clint Capella. I think that was even late last year to protect the rim and kind of be a pick and roll threat with Trae Young. Like this team makes so much sense on paper. They're going to be so good. And then they got off to that slow start and we all started to write them off. And then they climbed back into it in the second half of the season. And yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge Hawks fan, but I'm really proud of that team. I think that's tough to do, especially for a team that young to go this deep in the playoffs. I thought a successful season for them this year would have been like coming in 6th and, maybe losing in 6 games in the first round or something like that would have been like a season I would have felt good about if I was the Hawks. But yeah, to see them all the way in the conference finals, like the highs and lows of their season, it's hard not to root for them, honestly.
Well, I'm rooting for Milwaukee all the way since they won.
I think Milwaukee's going to steamroll them. Don't get me wrong. I think Milwaukee will win this series in 5 games. And some of the games might be close, but I think they have the personnel to like really shut Trae Young down. And Trae Young actually struggled in that Philadelphia series too, and other guys stepped up. I just think Milwaukee doesn't have as many holes as the Sixers do. But then again, I don't know. They struggle with some of the same stuff, just to a lesser extent. I mean, Giannis's free throws have not been dropping. Middleton and Drew Holiday have disappeared at times.
Yeah, definitely.
So I don't know. It could happen. But yeah, I'm excited to see that one, honestly. Maybe more so than the Clippers-Suns series that I think is also pretty boring because not everyone's healthy. But it's nice to find – I feel like this is maybe one of the first times I've seen like 2 healthy teams face each other, this year. So it'd be cool to see.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, Rich's picks obviously seem like they're working out well.
Yeah, it's going well when a guy who thinks the Bulls starting shooting guard's name is Adam Levine is calling the conference finals correctly. Like that means it's a weird year. It's like feels like March Madness. You can just pick like what jerseys you like the best and just be like, oh yeah, that team's going all the way. Yeah, like, there seems to be no rhyme or reason to it at all this year.
Rich mixes up more NBA NBA players than like anybody else I know. He's like, that's the guy from, the Supersonics, isn't it? And I was like, Rich,
There are
Supersonics
no
have not been a team like in quite some time.
They should
And
never
Rich is
got
like-
rid of the Supersonics.
Rich is like,
That's
back
cool.
We
back
could
in
do a
my
whole
day.
podcast
Bull
for
crap.
Rich on that.
But
I agree with you, Rich.
on another note, I would like to give some props to Kevin Durant, though. I actually watched Game 7 in the hotel room from after my Frisbee tournament.
Subtle
and
flex.
watching like Kevin Durant, class act right there. They kept trying to drill him on like questions about making excuses for the Nets. And he just said, you guys should be talking about Milwaukee. Milwaukee played really well. You shouldn't be like making a bunch of excuses and stuff. Like it was just very like nice and just very like class act for Kevin Durant after a huge loss like that to be.
I agree. I think this loss was almost better for his brand than winning because you got to see him carry a team, which is something he's been criticized for not wanting to do for a while. He's never really played on a team where he's the only star player. This is the closest, albeit a really short stint and due to injuries and with James Harden technically out there but not at full health. This is really the first time in his career he's ever had to carry a team the way a Kobe Bryant or a LeBron James had to for like significant portions of their prime. So it was kind of cool to see him do it because I think with LeBron James getting older, my friends and I were kind of asking ourselves, like, who's the best player in the league right now? Who's the best player? And in my head, I was kind of thinking like, well, I think it might be Kevin Durant, but we'll never get to see because he has so much help that we'll never really get to see him when he has to get it done, when there is no one to back him up. But we did see him for 2 games there completely take over the game and carry his team. And he came within inches of winning that series on that game winner. And I think that was really a testament to his like mental fortitude as a player and something I don't think he had at a younger age in his career. But to see him so angry that he only tied the game, you could tell he was exhausted, but I mean, he wasn't even happy to have tied the game. Like he would have rather have missed, like he seemed so exhausted. He would have rather have missed that shot or it been a 3. He was like, oh my God, I can't believe we had to go to overtime. Cause he had been I think he played like all but like 2 minutes or he played all but like 2 minutes in like the last 2 or 3 games or something like that. Like he played pretty much 48 minutes for like 2 or 3 games.
Yeah. I remember seeing his stat line. It was always over 40, which is insane for multiple games in a row. And and then
especially
putting up
coming
the
off
numbers
an injury and at his age, he's not young. He's like 32. So it's not like it's some 25-year-old doing that.
He's old enough to have played for the Supersonics.
He did play for
He was on the Supersonics.
I believe it was one of the second to last or one of the last few picks that they had before they moved the team.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
But it was crazy because I believe it was the last week when we did the pod and Austin, you were saying that James Harden might be the most important player on the team that night, and then Kevin Durant just went off that night. Like absolutely went off.
And I want to give a shout out to James Harden too, though, because people who think that, and I'm glad that not a lot of people have been saying it. There haven't been any casuals saying that he let them down or he choked or whatever. He didn't choke. Like he was not at all healthy. That does a lot for James Harden's brand too, because this is a guy you think of as selfish, a guy who let himself get out of shape to get traded and all this bad press about him. But then you see this guy go out here and play and not even really be able to move. But he went out there because he knew his team needed the help. And he did anything he could do, whether it was, standing stationary and, like directing traffic and throwing like backdoor alley-oops to people or trying to shoot 3-pointers stationary or, you playing defense with his hands because he can't move his feet and coming up with some big strips and stuff. Anyone who actually watched that series saw that like James Harden made more of an impact playing than he would have not playing, despite the statistics not being what you normally expect from James Harden. But if I had to point out 2 guys who choked in that series, though, it would be
Joe Harris.
He was arguably the worst player in the playoffs so far. Really terrible. I can't believe he's not getting more blame. He's so lucky there are 3 other star players to take attention away from the fact that he was truly bad. Like if he had shown up even a little bit, Kevin Durant's like insane play would have been enough to put them by the Bucks easily. Like if you think about it, like he was Joe Harris knocked down a couple more shots in that game alone, they would have been fine. But I think he was shooting like 18% in the playoffs this year from three or something.
Yeah, I
or at
believe
least
so.
in that series, which is horrible.
Oh my God, that
Yeah,
is
especially for a
beyond
And
shooter.
he's just a shooter. Like that's all he really. I mean, I'll give him a little bit of credit. He can put the ball on the deck a little and make some plays. And I don't think he's a horrible defender. But that guy's primary role is shooting the ball. And
Right.
we're here making fun of Ben Simmons because he can't shoot or whatever. But at least to Ben Simmons' credit, like he's able to play defense and pass the ball and rebound and block shots, get steals, draw charges, like do other things. But Joe Harris is there to shoot, and he didn't do it. And he had wide open looks, and he just didn't make them. So that's tough to see. And another guy who choked, I think, is Kyrie Irving, man. Those X-rays came up negative. The fact that James Harden's going to go out there and play with a hamstring injury, but you can't get out there for any of the last 3 games on a sprained ankle that came back negative, that really shows that's kind of strike 2, maybe even strike 3 for me for Kyrie Irving of just being like, you need to retire, man. Because earlier in the season, he didn't want to play for that brief stretch, earlier in the season. And then Harden got traded, and it seemed like that was fine. He was back and happy and ready to play, and he gave the point guard reins over, and he was looking like less of a selfish guy. But then here he is doing this again, and that was super selfish too. Similar to James Harden, Kyrie Irving at half strength would have helped that team.
I read a report that
anyone they could get.
That during the playoffs at some point, I don't remember, if it was before what game or not, but it was during the playoffs. I think it had to have been within these last couple of games. He was still like out there being like, well, there's things that I'm focused on that are bigger than basketball right now. And it's
like what though? It's not like he's making headlines for anything else.
But and it's like,
if he's donating to charities or like doing other shit, like that's cool. But like, I want to hear about it. I want to.
Yeah, and then like think about how that would feel as like a teammate of his, of being like, well, I'm not gonna like put my ass on the line for you guys because I'm thinking about other things right now. Like I feel like that'd be shitty as a teammate to hear that. Like
there's guys on that team playing for like the veterans minimum trying to win a championship, and they could have made more money going other places, and they took pay cuts because they thought they had a chance there. And then for that dude to do that I think is massively overlooked. I think for all the things we get on Kyrie Irving for, I think this is arguably the worst thing he's done.
Yeah.
Well, with that though, too, like you were just talking about, like the veterans minimum, like other players aren't going to want to go there because, like, you're expecting a big 3 and you don't know if you're ever going to have the big 3.
Right.
Because
they only played like 15 games together this year.
Yeah.
So it's hard to call it a super team when they're never out there together.
I'm surprised it was even
wasn't
that
as
many.
super as we all thought.
Yeah. I'm surprised it was even that many, and I wonder if that was like 15 games that they started, but within those 15 games, how much did they all even play? Where it's like, someone was probably on minute counts or someone went out in that game and stuff like that. I feel like it felt, I don't know, this might be just, perspective bias, but I feel like it felt like it was like 10 games max that they actually were like playing at like full speed together.
And they weren't at crucial points in the season where you saw glimpses of what they really could have been. I mean, I can remember a few games where they put up like 135 points for like a few games within maybe a week span or something like that. And you're like, holy shit, this is what we wanted to see from this team. And then, it was such a brief glimpse of like what they could have been, but oh well.
You'd have to think that still, if they bring that core back or most of those players back, and they are able to stay healthy for a whole season and into a playoff, that they would have to be the favorites again for next year.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
If they can achieve that, I guess.
I really like, again, I mean, it sounds like you're making excuses, and I like, to Rich's point, think it's great that Kevin Durant's not allowing himself to make excuses, but like this is a season to make excuses. Even like LeBron James, now that he's out of the playoffs, is like, look, now I have no dog in the fight. Everybody was talking shit when I said I had to play in the play-in tournament and all that kind of stuff. But now I'm out. I have no dog in the fight, and I'm a fan like you guys, and I think this is trash. Like, this is lame. Like, all the players we like are out. Like, there are more injuries in the playoffs this year than any season in NBA history. He's like, this is lame as a fan. So he's like, now I'm not even speaking from the perspective of a player trying to win a championship. Now I'm at home on my couch like you, and I'm telling you, just like any other fan is, like, this is garbage, dude. Like, this was trash. This was a poorly planned season. And it really is hard to take whoever wins this season with any weight. I mean, at least with the bubble, like there was a break before that. Everyone was pretty healthy. There were no fans, so it lost an element, but there was a challenge to that as much as there was a, kind of a ability to coach for that. But yeah, some of these teams that didn't have to play deep last year were at such an unfair advantage. I feel like there were challenges and disadvantages to playing in the bubble, but at least they affected everyone equally. Like this quick turnaround really only affected teams that did well last year.
Sure. Yeah. But yeah, it's hard.
Anyway.
It's hard from a league standpoint, that they were trying to pretty much force a full season, and it resulted clearly in a bunch more injuries. And I mean, you got to think that in a way, luck was a little bit against them. Like there's injuries every year. It just seems like this year it hit more of the star players than it typically does.
Well,
And
they
I was
played
just saying, like,
not a lot of rest though.
Yeah. Well, I was just saying also with like COVID, the injuries and stuff, like the facilities aren't running at like full capacity either. So like those trainers, those PTs, things like that they normally see, they either had to like travel to go see them, or they're like coming to their house now. Like they had to do everything different, even for like a training aspect too. Like training facilities were like shut down. You weren't allowed to have like the whole team like in at like certain times and things like that and stuff too. So like that's gonna affect like players' health and stuff too, because they're so used to like routine.
Or if you get COVID, even if it's mild and you make a full recovery, you're just out of basketball shape because you're not doing the things that you do on a weekly basis to stay in shape. And then it's easier to get hurt from that kind of shit, I imagine too. So,
right.
But anyway, speaking of, injuries and having some depth, Bears fans have an interesting problem this year because we have some depth at quarterback. Somebody threw it on here. What's going on, fellas? Are we starting Andy Dalton, or are we starting Fields to start this season? What do you guys think?
I think no doubt in most Bears fans' minds that week one it's going to be Andy Dalton taking the first snap. I think the question on most people's minds is how many games will it be until Fields comes in? Will it be all season? I doubt it. Will it be, about 6, 7, 8 games in or around the bye time, kind of like how it was the year with Mitch Trubisky? I think that's probably more likely. But I would be absolutely shocked if they started Justin Fields week one, just by everything, reports and everything we're hearing, especially from Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace and stuff like that. So that's kind of my not hot take on it. I think that's a pretty standard. What do you think, Rich?
I will say right now, fans are like furious about this. Like, there's a lot of Bears fans that do not like Matt Nagy or Ryan Pace at all. And for them to sit there and say that Andy Dalton starting week one, you got like a fan mutiny going on. The moment Dalton throws a pick or does anything wrong, he's like dead to Chicago. Yeah. Like, he is on such like thin ice, but I do think that like he should start the season because Justin Fields is a rookie. I mean, it sounds like he's doing really well. Sounds like he's like picking up the playbook, things like that. Everything sounds like he's doing everything appropriately, everything good. But again, he still is a rookie. And we also got to see him in the preseason. Like, if he's lighting up the preseason, then you're going to start having like the actual question of like, okay, should we start him week one or if
he even plays in the preseason? Like,
he needs to play in the preseason.
In this day and age, though, it's weird. Like, you'll see sometimes even backup quarterbacks not play in the preseason. I would love to see him play, and I would love to see him light it up in the preseason. But I think there is at least some question as to the fact that if he will even play in the preseason. I think most of last year,
in my opinion, he's young, he's healthy. The guy that you wouldn't want to play in the preseason, at least in other sports, would be the older veteran guy that you know is probably going to perform and is pretty consistent and learns playbooks pretty quickly and doesn't have things to feel out. The guy, and especially when you're trying to sell preseason tickets too, because we know it's COVID and the attendance is down. and sports teams are trying to fix that. People will go out to see Justin Fields start preseason games. Like, why wouldn't you let him start every single fucking game? Like, put Andy Dalton in if the game's close at the end or something, or no, even put Fields in those situations and give him practice for that. I just think Andy Dalton should only play a few snaps in the preseason. It should be Justin Fields playing all the games. He's younger. And then, I kind of agree. If he tears it up in the preseason, like, I don't know if you give him week 1, but I don't know what you do. This is such a weird situation. I honestly part of me wants to make the playoffs and stuff, and maybe Andy Dalton's the safer bet for getting in the playoffs. But I'd almost rather miss the playoffs and see Fields get a ton of experience and then maybe have a shot next year than continue to have this team hang in limbo and then maybe players get frustrated and stuff. I don't know. I guess if I'm a player on the Bears and we get knocked out in the first round of the playoffs or lose a wild card game or something like that, I would feel more comfortable if that came because we really believe in this future quarterback and he made some mental mistakes down the stretch of a playoff game and we came up a little short, but the kid's growing and learning. Then if we had that same thing occur, but it was because we had Andy Dalton out there, I think the latter would cause me to lose my patience as a veteran player and not want to play. Yeah. Whereas if we lose because we're taking a chance on a young player's development, I feel better about that as a player.
So, I mean, the good news is from what all reports are saying and from what I've been reading is they're at this point in his training camp, he's a full year ahead of where Mitch Trubisky was in his Fields is a full year ahead of where Mitch Trubisky was in his learning curve. They're saying that he's picking things up faster. He's making the right reads way quicker. And then just the fact of the matter is when you're hearing guys that are practicing with him at training camp, and when they ask him anything about Fields, especially on the offensive side of the ball, their face immediately lights up. I didn't see that as much with Mitch. With Mitch, they showed some respect. They're oh yeah, he's figuring it out. He's a good player. He's a good leader.
They gave him
he's coddled.
Yeah. So when
that's the thing, if these guys are excited to give it a try with Fields, I think it would be a mistake to not put Fields out there. If people are excited by the risk of putting him out there, then that's still better than them not being excited to play with Andy Dalton. You know what I mean? Because we know what the ceiling of this team is with Andy Dalton, and I think it's a more risky move, but we don't know what the ceiling is with Justin Fields. It could potentially be higher, maybe not this year. In the future, it'll definitely probably be higher. Yeah. But I would rather roll the dice now and just get this kid experience as soon as possible before this team starts to lose patience and key players start to, try to move on. Be
not that
rush trades or whatever, because we're stuck. So we might as well kind of build from the ground up and
not that it's the comparison that all Bears fans would want to hear, but I'm hearing reports that essentially saying Justin Fields plays a lot like what we wanted Mitch Trubisky to play almost, but he does literally every single facet of the game better. He's more accurate with the ball. He has a stronger deep pass, even on the move, which, was one of Mitch's best things that he did well is move outside of the pocket and, pick up yards and stuff. Fields is faster, stronger, can move downfield faster, can throw on the run better. They're saying that he can do everything Mitch Trubisky did and then do it better and in every aspect of the game, which that's pretty exciting because there was times that when Mitch had a good game that people were okay, this could be the future with Mitch. If he can do Mitch's best games consistently every week, then I think he could be actually very good.
I think he's going to be great. And that's why I personally, selfishly, maybe as a fan, but it sounds like from what you're saying about players getting excited too, I would rather just watch the kids struggle and just rip the Band-Aid off and get the possible struggles over with and just move on and get it going. I'm ready to see this kid make mistakes and just get, skip past this part to being good. Because I think, I don't know, maybe the hype is too high, but I think it's inevitable that like this guy's going to be great for us.
Sure.
At least compared to our quarterback standards, which are not as high as other teams.
I think the hard part is when you're playing quarterback for the Chicago Bears, I think getting that confidence is like huge. And I don't think we as a city do a good job of like putting confidence in our quarterbacks. I mean, as soon as any of the quarterbacks
I think
make any mistakes
in this rookie
so far, yeah. But if he made any mistakes and people started ripping him apart, and I mean, not saying he can't take that criticism, but we've seen before that a lot of the quarterbacks that we've had, even ones that had at least some degree of talent, struggle when the whole city was on them about, making mistakes. Jay Cutler is the perfect example of it. You can't deny that Jay Cutler had talent, but like literally everybody was on Jay Cutler all the time. Like at first it was he cares too much about the game. Then it was that he didn't care enough about the game, and people were constantly on him. Every time he made a mistake, no matter if he fouled it up with a good player or not, like any loss was on Jay Cutler's fault. And you don't see that in other.
But if you were an executive and you were to write a pros and cons list on Jay Cutler, one of the cons to Jay Cutler would be that that it's not like he was a rookie. He was brought in via trade, if I'm not mistaken.
It was a trade.
And so from what other GMs have said and what other personnel have said, that this dude has some attitude issues. Whereas it seems like Justin Fields has a great attitude. Like from what I've heard, from what little I've heard, Andy Dalton's staying after practice watching him. And that might, a player with a negative attitude might see that as a threat, seeing, oh, this guy's, only watching me to see what I do wrong so that he can pass me up in the rotation and keep me off the field. But he said it in answered it in such a positive way and said he's out there seeing what I'm doing wrong and trying to help me get better at it and stuff. So I don't know. I just think Fields somebody that knows. He seems humble enough to know that like he's going to make mistakes. And I don't see him getting really that bothered by like fans getting on him for making
that would be the hope.
Because why would you as a rookie? I'd be like, whatever, it's my job to make mistakes. Fucking Baker Mayfield sucked his rookie year, and that seemed like a fucking lock. So, of course, Justin Fields is going to struggle his rookie year. Most rookie quarterbacks do.
So, I'm going to stick up for Jay Cutler right now because Chicago media buried him, just like Adam was just saying. Like, when Jay Cutler came, Jay Cutler was the best quarterback. He was so good. And then when he got hurt in the playoff game against Green Bay, then after that, because he didn't go back out on the field, which was not his fault, he tried to go back out onto the field multiple times. Lovie Smith, the training staff, and everyone kept him off of that field during that playoff game. Then everybody wants to bring up Jay Cutler's attitude. It's not the greatest. Jay Cutler's not tough and things like that. That's the one that always drives me nuts is like when people like rag on like Jay Cutler's toughness, he got railed behind a Bears shitty offensive line so many times and would just get up and still bomb the ball deep.
Year after year, we had
my God, it's unreal.
Bottom 5 offensive line in the year. Or every year, it seemed like we were in the bottom 5. Like we gave up the most amount of sacks, the most amount of QB pressures. And he never complained about, he never even pulled an Aaron Rodgers and went out on TV and started complaining about everybody on the team. He was very critical of like himself and said, I'm going to do better or whatever. He got us to the playoffs like more times than not, I think, in his career of actually being healthy. Nobody treated Jay Cutler well in the media, but that's what I'm trying to say. And in general, I think Chicago media and fans are very hard on the quarterback position, and especially because we haven't had a good one. So every time someone makes a mistake, we go right back to, well, here we go again. It's the same thing. And immediately start like, that's hard, especially on a young player, on their confidence. I think that partially affected Mitch after he got injured that year. He was having a Pro Bowl caliber season in year 2 before going out with an injury, and he was never able to recover from that. But I think a lot of people kind of got on him, and it really hurt his confidence.
Yeah, Mitch was like his mentality though, like he wasn't going to be able to last, especially not even in like Chicago. Like, coming back from like injury, you're going to have your like rough games and stuff, but like you can't let the media and other things like that like dictate your mindset and stuff. Like there's so much of that going on where like Nagy tried to protect him as much as he could, but at the end of the day,
they straight up told him to stop running.
You shouldn't.
They're like, oh, if you're worried about getting hurt, stop running, and that really hurt his game because then they try to force him to be a pocket passer, and he threw way better outside of the pocket while like on a rollout or a boot or something like that. He threw way better outside of the pocket because I think it gave him that option to run if he wanted it. And then after he got hurt that year, they kept trying to force him to be a pocket passer. And even when he didn't have pressure, he could not throw from the pocket. But anyway, so I guess
far off topic, but
I guess Rich, what's your prediction? When will Justin Fields get his first start?
I feel like it's going to be after the bye week, unless Andy Dalton is struggling or he like gets hurt, because that's what just makes the most amount of sense. Let him see like actual defenses play at like full speed for the first couple weeks and things like that. With Andy Dalton too, learning like the reads and things like that. It sounds like he picks up on those things very well. So that's pretty much what it sounds like it's going to happen. Fans aren't going to be happy about it, but I think overall that's the smartest move to make. So I hope Nagy I hope he kind of sticks to his guns on that one and starts Dalton as much as fans don't want to see it. Especially week one, it's the Rams defense. Like Andy Dalton's old. We don't know how our offensive line's going to play. Like let Andy Dalton kind of get killed back there if the offensive line's struggling instead of Justin Fields running for his life.
Sure. Yeah, hopefully our line takes a step forward with bringing in literally, I think we had to have brought in like 8 new people on the line this year, whether through free agency or the draft. So hopefully that's an improvement and not, the same old story with the offensive line. But Austin, not what you want to happen, but what do you think will happen? When will Fields get his first start?
I mean, I don't know. What I think will happen is they'll probably play super safe. They'll start Andy Dalton. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess unless he starts playing terrible, like if we dip below 500, then maybe they'll put Fields in. But I imagine we'll probably just ride Andy Dalton's coattails to like a mediocre record and like mediocre, like wild card-ish, like kind of standing, and just I don't know if Fields will ever play, honestly. Like if I'm being honest, like they just doesn't seem like they prioritize the long term. Like they just don't really want this to feel like a rebuild, and they're just like, oh yeah, we'd rather just play a mediocre quarterback like we're used to, stay in our comfort zone of just not having a good quarterback. And it's like, I personally would rather just take the risk and be like, can we just let this guy play and go and just make mistakes? And, this is a talent that's only going to get better if he has opportunity. Because I don't think there's any weightlifting or training or things behind the scenes that the guy needs to do to get prepared. I think he's just going to, like you said, just need to face NFL defenses. And the only way to face NFL defenses is to play NFL games. So I think the only thing he's going to struggle with is just adjusting to the pro game. Like, I think he has all the tools to do it. He just needs, the sooner he gets in there and starts doing it, the better.
Sure. I think my prediction is this, which is, it's going to sound like a multi-part prediction. Either Andy Dalton's going to really struggle out the gate, and I think Fields will be starting by like week 4 or 5. I think it'll be early. Or Andy Dalton does better than what everyone is expecting, and I think Andy Dalton plays the entire season.
That's kind of what I maybe think will happen is, like, I don't think there's going to be an exit ramp. I think we're going to either because I don't think Andy Dalton's going to struggle. Like, I think Andy Dalton is going to deliver exactly to what he's capable of, which is playing solid, getting this team, right around 500 or a couple games above, and like having a chance at the playoffs. I don't think he's ever going to play bad enough week to week where, he's going to be turning the ball over an absurd amount in one game, or have like one just outlandish game where the fans turn on him. I think if he's just going to play average to slightly below average like every game
Sure.
consistently, and I just don't think he's ever going to play bad enough to warrant like pulling him. So
I think
that's why I think the decision, in my opinion, would need to be made before the season starts. And if anything, if you start 0-3 behind Fields, then you put in the safety net and you put Dalton in and you say, all right, maybe next year, Justin, like, you've got some things you need to work on.
I think another thing that kind of affects the decision is if Aaron Rodgers plays at all for the Packers this year, because if he doesn't, then that division is going to be a lot easier to take, and we could take the division with 8-9 wins, or probably you'll need at least 9 still wins to take a division. That would be easier to do with Aaron not playing. So if we're in the position with Andy Dalton to win the division because Aaron Rodgers isn't there, then I could see the coaching staff think, why pull him out of there, when we're in the position to make the playoffs with him back there. So I think that'll also kind of affect the decision as well.
So, speaking of playoffs, let's get to some NHL playoff update. Adam, what's going on with the NHL right now?
Yeah, it looks like two good series so far, which again, the Montreal Canadiens kind of continue to surprise me. They kind of got off to
I thought this would be the exit ramp for them.
Yeah, I think they took a 2-1 series lead at one point. I think they're down 3-2 right now.
I think it's 2-2.
No, it's 2-2.
Is it still 2-2?
Now. It's 2-2. They played
tonight
at 8.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm trying to wrap this podcast. We got a lot of good playoffs.
Yeah, definitely have some sports to watch tonight.
Game 2 tonight too.
Yeah. So so that Canadian team continues to kind of impress a little bit. I'm still calling that it's going to be Lightning versus the Knights in the final, and I think Lightning over the Knights in the final for still some reason that I can't really explain. It's just a gut feeling.
I'm just going with my gut at this point too, man. I think it'll be Islanders Knights, and the Knights will win.
It's not a bad call.
I don't know why. The Islanders are hanging around. I don't know. I just feel like that team.
That's the series that's 3-2, correct?
Yes.
Islanders are down 3-2 in that series after last night.
Oh, they are?
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Oh, yikes. I thought it was 2-2. I had missed it.
I believe that was another
one.
I think they
probably going to be Lightning.
I think they went up 2-1 to start that series and are now down 3-2.
Yeah.
It's not looking good for them.
But definitely both series have been really competitive. I think the game last night ended like 8-0, which was the first. I think they were saying it was like the biggest blowout in NHL playoffs in the last like 30 years or some shit like
insane.
That.
But it's only one game. That's the thing. Like, I love the playoffs and I love the series format because people get so hung up on the way the teams win. It's like, just
still only counts as one.
Smoke a team, it's only one win.
Yep, still only counts as one. So but definitely, for people that don't typically watch a lot of hockey, you should tune in because I think both these series are going to stay tight. I don't think we're going to see a lot more of those blowout type games. And I think any of these two teams that end up in the finals at this point, it's going to be good games. Earlier in the year, if you would have told me that Montreal would have ended up in the finals, I would have been like, well, they probably got lucky and it's going to be a shit finals. They're going to get blown out, but they're somehow just kind of doing their thing and hanging around and playing well enough to, be there. Good goaltending. For them.
It's crazy. Just old school, like get by on the goaltending, like grind it out hockey.
So, but yeah, definitely tune in. There's not many teams left. So,
down to the final four, so to speak.
Yep.
But anyway, speaking of the final four, moving up past hockey, we're on to the Eastern and Western Conference Finals in the NBA, down to our final four teams. And we talked about, the Hawks and how much of an overachieving season this has become for them, and kind of an up and down season where they looked like they were going to underachieve and now they're going to massively overachieve.
Sure.
But speaking of someone who has kind of consistently underachieved, in the second half of the season, Ben Simmons, guy who, made the All-Star game. His numbers were down a little bit, but people were applauding him, myself included, for taking a leap forward on defense and for going with the game plan and playing through Embiid and stuff. And now you kind of flash forward and that narrative has changed. And now people are trying to drive this guy out of town.
Sure. Yeah.
You guys can see on our handy dandy spreadsheet here, we've got the odds of various trade destinations for Ben Simmons in the offseason. Are there any that jump out to you that you think would be a good fit for him?
Obviously, we talked about this a little bit before the pod, and I think we
Yes,
both
we always
agree.
do. We always do the pod.
We always talk for just as long beforehand than we do actually, on air per se. I think we both kind of thought it might be a decent fit for the Bulls to acquire him, especially if the asking price isn't going to be as high because he's kind of on the outs in the city. After these playoffs, a game, which everyone kind of expected them to win, at least this series, and maybe lose in a conference finals or something. But if
they had the easiest path to the conference finals of any team, in my opinion.
Yeah, so if the asking price isn't too high, I think adding a premier defender to the Bulls, and letting Zach LaVine continue to score and Vooch score. I don't hate that move at all. And then the other one that I've been hearing a lot of, and I don't know if I particularly like it or if it's just an interesting thing to talk about, is kind of like a Simmons plus picks for like Damian Lillard going to like Portland or something. Might be interesting.
I've heard maybe McCollum for Ben Simmons, because I think that's a guy on the opposite side of the conference that's dealing with a lot of the same things. He does a lot of the same things as the best player on the team. He's not really a good complement to Damian Lillard because he kind of struggles on defense. He's a score-first guard, kind of undersized. And so he kind of is just a mini Damian Lillard. And, sort of the same way that, Ben Simmons, kind of struggles with some of the same things that Embiid struggled with. He needs to be around the basket. He's, a bigger player, I think maybe that trade works for both teams because it pairs kind of a guard big man duo for both teams. Cause I think that's one of the biggest problems that I think maybe people are missing about Ben Simmons is that this guy is a revolutionary player if used in the right system. He's a center. Like he can guard all five positions. Like why aren't we? The only reason he's not playing center is because Joel Embiid is in Philadelphia.
Sure.
But he should be playing center surrounded by five shooters. And I think in Portland, if they're able to give up like Nurkic and McCollum, or give up McCollum and maybe bring Nurkic off the bench or move him for some more shooting, they could play Simmons at the 5. They could play Covington at the 4, which he did a lot in Houston when they were doing that no center experiment. He actually played really well there, better than he has at any point in his career, in my opinion. So he's kind of a natural 4 or 5. They play those two guys on the front line, and then they could play Damian Lillard at the point. They have Norman Powell, who they got from Toronto, who's a nice like shooting guard, small forward. And then they could throw like another shooter in there, and then they would have Ben Simmons and Lillard just kind of bringing the ball up. Lillard is a great enough shooter to play off ball a little bit, which I think would be good for him. So I think his biggest weakness is that he's just fucking tired at the end of the game because he has the ball in his hand so much.
Yeah.
I think it'd be nice to see a guy who can make some plays and see Damian Lillard play off the ball a little bit. So I don't know. I think that works really well, honestly.
Sure.
And I think Damian Lillard can stay, and that will be a trade that would maybe work.
that could be
otherwise the Sixers are probably gonna have to give up like Tobias Harris and Simmons to get Damian Lillard, which might also be worth it.
And possible picks along with that as well.
For sure. And then I'm just looking at this list of other teams where I think he'd fit good. The Minnesota Timberwolves. I know that's a weird team because they're not very good, but Karl Anthony Towns is one of the best 3-point shooting centers in the league. I think he consistently shoots it at like over 40%. So I think that's a situation that works too, because he can kind of stand out on the perimeter and shoot, and Simmons can kind of space the floor and kind of put 4 shooters around the arc and just kind of get to the basket at will. I think he needs to be playing more like Giannis, like a power forward or a center, instead of trying to play point guard with like a true back to the basket center. The reason the Giannis thing works, and it still doesn't always work at times, but the reason it works is because Brook Lopez can shoot threes. He can step out and like hit the 3. consistently, and he doesn't need touches in the low post the way Joel Embiid does to be effective. So it's
Sure.
almost better to have a worse center, to go somewhere where he'd play with some good like wing players as opposed to good interior players. I think the Toronto Raptors, another great fit. They've got Chris Boucher, who was getting some big minutes towards the end of the season, who can really shoot the ball. Then they would have one of the longest, like most versatile lineups in the league. They could switch everything on pick and rolls. They'd have like four guys who are like 6'8" or taller between Simmons, Boucher, Siakam, and I don't know who they'd give up, but if they could keep
Sure.
Siakam, maybe try to give up like Kyle Lowry and some pieces or something. If they had Siakam, Anunoby, Boucher, and Simmons, that would be a fierce defensive team. They could also like shoot well enough to let Simmons kind of function there too. That would be kind of interesting to see.
Right.
And then I think one that's not on this little list we have is the Houston Rockets. They're pretty bad right now, but like
Right.
that's a team that has kind of some nice shooting. They're used to playing around James Harden, and they haven't changed the lineup too much to where, Christian Wood, I think, would be a nice front line complement to Ben Simmons because he can shoot the ball really well. So that would maybe be an interesting one too, even though that's a really bad team. But I think him being there would maybe make them a little better. But yeah,
Sure.
I don't know. I think the Raptors one's the most exciting. I think the Portland one is the one that would probably be the right fit and the move that would benefit both teams.
Yeah, definitely think that makes sense. Rich, what's your opinion? Where do you think he's going, or do you think he's staying?
Well, looking at the odds list here, I mean, I believe he's going to be out of Philly, even though the odds say that he's staying put. They have, like, Philly has tried this combo. They have pushed it so hard, and it's just not working. At a certain point, you have to just, like, get past it. You got to choose one or the other and just kind of build around that guy, because the both of them together is just not working. The one that intrigues me the most on this list, I think, is the Wizards with Westbrook and Beal. I think with both of them being high shooters and things like that, you get Simmons in there at that center position, like you were saying, Austin. And I think the Wizards could take a pretty big step forward, adding that extra, like, big, like, defenseman on
Do you
that
think
team.
they'd have to give up Westbrook? It would probably be Westbrook that they would give up because I don't think they'd give up Bradley Beal, especially since having Westbrook and Simmons would just be two of the worst shooters and free throw shooters in the league.
Yeah.
A really bad, redundant pairing. But if they were able to give up Westbrook and put Ben Simmons in there, I think that would work because I think the Russell Westbrook late in the season kind of worked with all that shooting around him, being able to get to the basket and stuff. Ben Simmons, I think, could really open up. They play fast there. They play a much more up-tempo game. They're not throwing the ball into the post and stuff. I think it's easy to look at Ben Simmons' statistics and be like, they're not very impressive. But he was doing what he was told to do in his defense. Like, he's feeding the ball in the post. That doesn't show up in the stat sheet when you make an entry pass, bounce pass, and let a guy spend 5 minutes making post moves before they score. Like, that's not going to show up in the stat sheet. But if he goes and plays in Washington, he might have – I'm not saying he'll have Westbrook numbers, but he might have, LaMelo Ball kind of, numbers or something. He might, his numbers might go up. He might really like playing there. And then one of their biggest problems was their defense. And I think the key is that this dude is your anchor, which Embiid also is. So I think they do the same thing sort of on the defensive end because they're both kind of like, center caliber defensive anchor players. I don't think a team needs two defensive anchors anymore. And I think Simmons should go somewhere that's really offensive oriented, that has a lot of shooting around it. And then he can be that anchor at center. And I don't know. I think the team I'd like to see him on most is Toronto. If they can get rid of Kyle Lowry and move him there, maybe, Fred, or maybe they get rid of Fred VanVleet and then they keep Lowry. But if they move one of those two backcourt guys and they put Simmons in there, the length of that lineup would suit him so well, and the fact that they could shoot, I think that would be really exciting. They could switch on any pick and roll, like anyone on that team could guard any position, and I think they would have a really great time. I think they'd be one of the best defenses in the league, and he'd be able to kind of get them out in transition and stuff too.
Sure.
Playing a little faster.
Nice. Sounds good. So with that, let's just go right into our 2-minute drill then.
Which I did not type any questions.
And
It's okay. I wrote all 6.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I am
usually
doing.
am better at managing that.
Yeah. I am doing the 2-minute drill today. So I believe Adam is going to be asking the questions.
Yeah, I'll ask.
And I would assume.
I think Rich is gonna fail.
I'll contribute somehow.
Yeah.
You can
Wait, the
time
NBA
Austin.
draft lottery's right now?
Yeah, Pistons I think just got the number 1.
My friend just texted me that. That's awesome. Good for the Pistons, dude. Honestly, that would be another interesting Ben Simmons fit on the Pistons. But
yeah, they literally just announced that as far as I know.
Yeah, I got like 9 texts in a row. My friend's a little excited. Josh, who should have been on this pod months ago. But
yeah. Is he a Pistons fan?
He's from Michigan. So yeah.
He's like the only Pistons fan left.
Yeah, there are no Pistons fans. But it's like a joke because we used to the Pistons were bad when we were in college and we would just watch them. We got like mildly into them because it's like funny to see. Like, I don't know. They're a nice little team.
Sure. All right. Well, so we can look at this later and maybe we'll talk about it a little bit next week, but let's jump into this 2-minute drill. And Austin, when you have the timer ready, let me know and I'll count down for Rich. I think we're going to stump him this time.
What did we do last time? Like at the end of the first question, I pressed start, or how did we do it?
After I read the first question, hit start.
Okay, go ahead. Read the first question.
Are you ready, Rich?
Yes, I am ready.
All these questions are very answerable, but I feel like you're going to struggle.
Okay.
They're not going to be sports questions. All right. You already know that.
Here we go. Okay. Which sport has the overall best athletes?
Football.
Why?
I don't have to give a why. The best athletes.
Oh my gosh, this is BS. This is already tossed out. This is classic. Rich.
Okay, fine. Moving on.
I'll come back. I will come back and answer
name
that.
2 NBA players that will be traded this offseason.
Ben Simmons and Russell Westbrook.
All right. What is the best mascot in any sport?
Holy cow. Skip. Come back.
Will Aaron Rodgers play this season?
Of course he's playing.
For who?
He's staying in Green Bay. He's not leaving.
Which NFL team will have the best defense this year?
The best defense this year?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be the Buccaneers. They kept everyone.
Okay. Will Jonathan Tays play for the Hawks next year?
Yes.
I hope not.
Yes, he will definitely play for the Hawks. I don't think they're going to trade him.
Mind you, he did not play at all this year due to some unknown illness that no one ever knew anything about.
You mean play or like be rostered?
Will he play?
Oh, okay. That's different.
The best mascot is I'm going to go with the Mets mascot for baseball.
Really?
Yes. Giant baseball.
He's looking that up. He's not even listening right now.
I did not look anything up. All I have is playoffs for NHL and NBA playoffs. And that
you got 20 seconds.
And then 20 seconds. What was the other one I was coming back to, Adam? That first one?
Which sport has the best overall athletes?
It's going to be football because football, you got a bunch of different sized individuals as well. The linemen are huge and the way that they have to move and use their strength. And then not only that, then you get guys on the outside, playing corner and receiver that are super fast. Best athletes.
You had one more question, right?
There.
No, that was it.
Oh my god!
But half of them were one word answer.
Exactly. He gives one word.
You guys can't. It's not my fault. You guys waste so much time explaining stuff.
Well, that's the whole point of the 2-minute drill.
We don't make a podcast. We should do a Rich style podcast that's 10 minutes long, and we just like
Rich. That's
who's winning this series.
The point of the 2-minute drill is you're not only supposed to answer, but you're supposed to explain why you're answering it that way.
Man, I just feel you guys are just hating because I win, and you guys
go
are
back
upset
and
with my
listen to
answers.
all the other podcasts. When anybody else does a 2-minute drill, they don't only answer; they say why. And I've even said when we're doing the 2-minute drill,
you even got to say why for the mascot. You got to be like, oh, he's got a cool outfit. Like you got to give a reason, like why for everything.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense. The Mets, fuck that guy. It's Benny
Isn't
the
that just a
Interesting.
baseball with a hat?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
That's such a cop out. You just Googled top
If
mascot.
anything, it's
I
if it's
didn't Google
baseball,
anything.
if it's
Google top mascots, he's probably not even on there.
if
Yeah.
anything,
You're
if
good.
it's
The top
baseball at
mascot is
all,
actually for baseball. I believe
The
it
top
is
mascot is actually the
Philadelphia.
gorilla from the
yeah,
Phoenix
the
Suns. What's
Philly
up, Mraz?
Fanatic.
Yeah, Philly
is-
Fanatic. There you
is
go.
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
If you were
That's
gonna go
cool.
baseball, it would have to be the Philly Fanatic.
Yeah. Well,
But that's
I went
also
with the
wrong
Mets.
because
What about Benny the
it's
Bull?
Benny the Bull. Have you
Yeah.
ever seen Benny the Bull?
Yes, I've seen Benny the Bull. I've been
He's
to the
fucking
game.
awesome.
Dude, Benny
Hey,
the Bull is a
I am
psychopath. He'll,
sticking with
jump
my
over
Mets
the railing into the
mascot
tunnel.
pick here,
Yeah.
okay?
He's a
Yeah,
I went
crazy
with the
guy.
Mets mascot.
Absolutely awful.
You guys are just still rating
Absolutely.
on
All right, we
me.
gotta
terrible.
end this pod
Bunch
before
of
I
haters.
Okay,
Ten
we're gonna
minutes choke
all
that
next
shot.
episode is gonna be going through Rich's answers and telling you why or how you're wrong or why you're right.
Oh, okay.
It's gonna be
All right, sure. Let's do it.
We
I
should
would-
do a
For it.
40-minute drill where Rich just has to do the podcast by
Yeah.
himself, and then he'll learn how important it is to actually explain.
I will say this. I think the NFL defensive lineman is the most underrated athlete in all of sports. The guy can like go out there, run like a freaking like 4.8 40, and he can bench like 450 pounds and still like cut
300-pound like lineman.
and like still like cut on a dime. Like those guys are just like the most freak athletes in like all of sports. Like it's insane. But we can talk about that more some other time. Anybody else have anything to add?
Nah, I'm actually gonna think on that best athlete one. That's a great question. That would have stumped me. I don't know.
Yeah.
what it would be. But yeah. Anyway, till next time, fellas. It's been fun.
All right. Peace
See
out.
ya.